All right, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Can everybody hear me okay out there? Hopefully we're doing good. So we apologize for the delay in the show. We were having a conversation with a trusted source in the GSM community not too long ago. And he was talking about censorship and how after the 2020 election, things are going to get real tight when it comes to GSM and global cooling. So, to me, that put a little urgency about what we're doing here at this channel, what we're trying to teach everyone we can. We're still trying to work with getting our videos shared to as many people as possible so people can hear this evidence and be ready for what's going to happen, because we're already seeing a form of censorship. Tonight was completely out of our control, so we had to switch the entire format of how we broadcast tonight. So we are live. Here we go for Friday, May 10th, 2019. Thanks to everyone who has tuned in tonight, our Friday Night Live edition here. And we got quite a bit of a show packed up here for you guys. So let's take a look at solar and wind speeds right now. 367.8 kilometers per second, right about with a density of a 16.7. And going over to the space weather section of thegrandsolarminimum.com, taking a look at sunspot activity and solar flares as well. And ever since we had those C-class flares, it's kind of gotten a little quiet. Here are the two sunspots, AR2740 and AR2741. Take a little look in here. As you see, they are decaying. Let's jump over to spaceweather.com and find out how many sunspot numbers we're talking right now. And right now we're looking at 25. So 74 days without sunspots is the remaining number. And we'll continue until these two sunspots pass through. But according to spaceweather.com, AR2740 is decaying and poses a declining threat for solar flares. And we can see that clearly here as well. But take a look at the SDO in motion and compared to what these things were when they were coming off the eastern limb. And let's take a look. Not quite. There was that last C-class flare, and that there might be a possibility of a grazing of the magnetic field, the northern part at least. So this is not a direct at Earth type situation. But I do believe that these are still, these flares are still trying to say this sunspot region is still active. Let's take a look at spaceweather.com. We do have a weak impact arriving a day earlier than expected. A coronal mass ejection hit Earth's magnetic field on May 10th around 1720 UTC. The impact was weak, barely rattling our planet's magnetosphere. Geomatic storms probably not in the offing, although stay tuned for updates. Enhanced magnetic fields in the CME's wake might yet cause a disturbance. And as we are looking at space weather right now, we see a little bit more action from those active regions, and we will continue to monitor these as well. And let's take a look at our star on the reverse side. Here's those two sunspots. They're decaying. Right now in the section that's missing, it's hard to say what's happening there. But after these sunspots are done, it does look like the sun will go blank for at least 15 to 20 days at this point, unless we get some fresh activity and something happens to appear. Now, let's take a look at TSI. And at this point, I don't know if it's my browser or if it's the website itself, but I've checked both data sets here for the 24-hour and the 6-hour reading. And the last TSI information I have here is for April 12th. Oh, I'm sorry, this goes to April 21st, I believe. Yeah, April 21st, which was Easter. So, Starman, if you're watching right now, please message me and let me know if you have any updated information on TSI. I know as far as I rely on solar observations to give me a lot of different kinds of resources to look at information. So he came first to mind. But yes, we haven't had a TSI, a real true TSI update in quite some time. I believe the last broadcast, I think I might have been a little confused as I was reading the report, and I was once again reading April 21st numbers. So hopefully we will get the information on that. And before we go into the article, just take a look at our current radar. Northern Alabama, northern Mississippi is in the bulk of the showers. Western Tennessee into central Tennessee in the Nashville area, you're about to get some steady to moderate showers for the next several hours. Panhandle of Texas into Oklahoma, also some heavy rain showers as well. And boy, it just seems like, you know, down here in Florida, this area is seeing its share of rain and severe weather. And right now we are looking at, looks like another stationary front just kind of parked here. So we will expect some more flooding. And this is our current look here in the Northeast. Some heavy rains in the upstate New York region earlier today across the central part of the state, Pennsylvania as well. Right now it is quieting down. So let's go ahead and get right into it, shall we? GSM World News, taking a look at some crop damage in India. And this is the result of Cyclone Fani. Now, these original numbers, the storm that hit on May 3rd, 2019, but there is going to be a delay when you have situations like this. So here is what we know right now, according to Watchers.news. Information and Public Relations Secretary Sanjay Kumar Singh said less than 33% crop loss has been reported after the cyclone affected the districts of Odisha. Of the total crop damage, 91,000 acres are irrigated and 179,000 are rain-fed. Singh added that also 30,000 perennial crops have been affected due to the cyclone. A joint verification is underway in the affected districts to assess the crop loss. The state capital of Bhubaneswar and in the entire Puri district continue to reel under its impact, as it would take a few more days to fully restore power, telecom connectivity, banking, and ATM networks in these areas. While cautioning people of hardships ahead, the government said May 9th that power connections are yet restored for around 70% of consumers in the area, though water supply has been fully restored. Fani damaged about 155,000 acres of crops in Bangladesh. The worst affected crops included paddy, maize, vegetables, and jute. Agricultural minister said around 13,000 farmers in 25 districts suffered losses, more than half of the country, adding that the government is providing seeds, fertilizer, and cash. So there is a little bit of a happy ending here, but not really. And we don't know what the amount of cash or seeds, or even if it's enough to, you know, meet their financial obligations and fulfill orders as well. Again, we'll leave the link here at the website, the Grand Solar Minimum. And the last time we did a live broadcast, we were talking about that first blast of cold wave. Well, here we have another blast of cold air coming. It says here, according to Watchers.news, just a couple of days after record-breaking cold hit much of Europe, bringing heavy rain, a lot of snow, and below-average temperatures, another shot of Arctic cold air will push towards the continental Europe from May 11th through the 14th. Originally, we thought May 11th through the 18th. Thankfully, these forecast models are falling back. Temperatures across Europe are still below average for this time of year, but yet another push of very cold Arctic air will start affecting Northwest Europe on May 11th and May 12th and push down to central regions and all the way down to northern Africa by May 13th and 14th. Heavy rain, snow, and frost are expected. A notably warm period is expected from May 21st through the 26th. And they list some articles here about the cold that's happening in right now in Europe. And again, there's some stationary moisture happening here across the pond as well. We were talking about Texas, how it seems like a system just kind of sits and just plants and parks over it for a little while. We're kind of seeing a very active pattern here in Europe as well, where we are seeing similar situations where lots of moisture falling in the same region over and over again. Here's a look at temperatures, battling to get back into spring-like conditions. As you see, the green and the blue, still some freezing temperatures popping up. Northern Italy. Here's a look at the moisture map that we will see the added or total precipitation. This is the rain map right here. What's it remind you of, folks? Last week when we showed you the 14-day rain precipitation map, we saw a lot of light purple. Now, there was also a lot more bright yellow on the U.S. map than the European map. But folks, going all the way out to the 25th of May, very similar to the maps we showed you the last broadcast. And yep, that's snow accumulation right there, folks. Some of that purple and green. Some of that green represents a lot. And we're talking about 20 inches in certain regions or more and higher elevations. All right, check out another article from Watchers.news, the wettest 12-month period in recorded history, and I don't doubt it. And this is from NOAA, so I guess we're not supposed to, huh? Or are we? But this is an interesting article. It's some truth for once from the weather station, and they're starting to learn now that, that you can't hide this anymore, in my opinion. Right now, the average across the United States total accumulated rainfall is 36.2 inches from the period of May 18th till April of 2019. Now, why are we reporting this is that during this 12-month period, this was the longest, or I'm sorry, this is the first year-long span ever to top 36 inches. Not just in the last 100 years, but as far back as they can see, we have never seen this much precipitation in the United States. The dark green represents record weather. The lighter shade in the dark is much above, and then we get into the teal-like color where it's above average. And the beige up there in the Northwest, that claims to be below average. So it's fair to say right now, looking at this map, 35% of the country is having historical rainfalls, floods, snow, you name it. And then another 15% of the country is experiencing above average, or I'm sorry, much above average conditions. Precipitation ranks. This is crazy. Usually I'm bashing NOAA for cooking the books on the temperatures and stuff, but I mean, this data right here, guys, by them telling the truth about it, this also will confirm other papers that have been done, how moisture in saturated soil has a cooling effect on the atmosphere, on the climate. And here we are looking at this green to dark green map, record weather, record wettest, I should say. A lot of those states in the upper hundreds. I'm sorry, the 114s, the 122s, not upper, but in the upper part of the wettest on record, which is a 124 is the highest you can get in the rank. I see a lot of 114s, 122s. It's safe to say more than half of the country is at least ranked in the 100. Again, we've confirmed that saturation of soil for a long period of time creates cooling. It has a cooling effect. This is also another milestone here. This is the second smallest drought footprint on record at the end of April. The second. I remember, look, and this is just last year, but I remember when I was younger and I used to follow droughts. I've always had an obsession with weather, and droughts always like concerned me. Like, oh, we're going to run out of water. I don't want that to ever happen. And I remember that droughts took years to go away. I mean, it was just, back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't a couple. This is literally a year's difference. And you guys don't want to see the 2016 map. It's outrageous. Well, here it is now. There's the two. I guess it's not that outrageous, but this is May of 2016. You can see where the intense areas. Look, that dark red right here in California, that's not supposed to go away in 2 years. Here we are now. The state of California is in very, very low drought stage right now. Unreal. So the 10 wettest 12-month spans in the U.S. are clustered around several periods when major flood events pushed numbers up in a big way. Over the past year, we've had Hurricane Florence in the southeast, as well as remarkably soggy autumn in the Midwest, and the nation's wettest winter on record. In 2015-16, we saw the wettest months on record in both Texas and Oklahoma, and then the southeast flooding related to offshore Hurricane Joaquin in October of 2015. Also, it's important to point out that we were in I would say a moderate El Nino, not a strong one, but a moderate. We were definitely in the El Nino criteria during 2015 and 2016. So just another observation here. This goes back to talking with Scott Chapman, how we're cycles among cycles among cycles. And, you know, El Nino is attributing to the moisture. So is the part of the solar minimum, where not only is the El Nino contributing to the precipitation part, but also cosmic rays and cloud nucleation is also playing a factor right now in the amount of precipitation that we are having right now as well. So just another example of multiple cycles linking up. All right, let's continue on here. 117-year-old May snowfall record broken in Minnesota. Several snowfall records have been broken in the Duluth area, Minnesota this week, as the severe storms continue dropping very heavily on the already saturated ground across the south-central United States. Duluth area had already broken several snowfall records. And on May 9th, they reported a record of 10.9 inches in Duluth. May month snowfall record surpassing the 8.1 inches in 1954. May 8th was the single snowiest day in May, with 8.3 inches recorded, breaking the previous record of 5.5. So that's a little bit more of a record there. That's 2.8 inches more than the record that was set. And here is the big one here, 1902. So that was the 117-year-old record. And what we were looking at is about 2.8 inches more of snow than we had 117 years ago on May 10th, 1902. So almost to the day on this record snowfall. And here are the records once again. Daily snowfall on 5/8 was 8.3, but set back in 1924. Single snowiest day we just reported on 8.3 inches. Daily snowfall on May 9th, 2.3 inches. And remember, that record was set back on May 9th in 1990 at 0.2 of an inch. So we have learned quite a bit in the last 20 years. We've seen an increase in snow accumulation in May, and quite a jump, 2.1 inches in less than 30 years. Tons of footage here, cars off the road. I mean, we're talking about May 10th, and we're still dealing with snow-like weather. Leave the link on our website. Keep it moving here, folks. Unfortunately, we were just talking about drought. Now we're going to go overseas. India has been affected with Cyclone Fani and all the moisture they got over there. Well, the drought situation has worsened in Maharashtra. And I apologize if I butcher that name. I know this is a hard time for you guys out there, and you don't need a Yankee out here mispronouncing your country. But out here with 80% of the districts in Karnataka.
Hey, you're trying, Jake. You're doing the best you can.
You know, it's just not fair, though. I mean, these people, they don't. No, let's get a guy who can read these terms, I guess, right? I promise I'll get better, folks. Anyway, the State Water Resources Department on May 3rd showed that 3,000 major, medium, and minor dams had just 18.51% live storage compared to 29.95% the same date last year. Nearly 4,774 water tankers have been deployed to that area that I can't pronounce to provide residents with water compared to 937 to the previous year. So that jumped up quite a bit. Almost 5,000 water tankers have been deployed right now compared to the 937 to last year. 8.2 million farmers are affected by the drought. All major crops, including maize, soy, cotton, citrus, lemon, groundnuts, they have all suffered due to poor rainfall. That is not the situation across the country, though, unfortunately. So we got drought on one side of India and then plentiful rain on the other side. And just like we've talked about several times before tonight, you've got drought during these GSM, not just wet precipitation all over the world. It's really hard to look out your window and say, oh, there's no GSM. You can't do that. You can't look out your window and say, hey, it's 80 degrees outside and it's hot. There ain't no global cooling going on here. There's no floods over here because it's drought. That's not how the GSM works. That's not how these conditions work. If it was that easy, it sure would make a lot of our jobs really easy as far as reporting on this. So, all right, let's continue to move right along here at the grandsolarminimum.com. It's been a while since I talked about this volcano, relatively strong eruption at Sinabung Volcano in Indonesia. It says a relatively strong eruption took place in Indonesia's Sinabung Volcano at 0048 UTC, May 7th, 2019. The last eruption of this volcano took place in February of 2018. No kidding. According to the Darwin VAC, the eruption produced a column ash cloud of 15,000 feet. So nothing too concerning as far as getting in the atmosphere. The aviation color code is at an orange. The eruption lasted for 42 minutes and 49 seconds and had a maximum amplitude of 120 millimeters, with the head of Mount Sinabung monitoring post, Armand said. A thick ash column was produced and heavy ashfall was reported in several villages around the volcano. Officials deployed at least 3 fire engines and 18 officers to assist in the cleaning process. And here's some absolute gorgeous shots being taken of the eruption. Enough of this stuff gets on these plants that will affect crop life as well. Nothing too serious here, but just an idea of how the sunlight does get blocked from these ash clouds. Not the biggest eruption by any means, but still something at least to talk about. All right, we'll leave that link also in our website link. And I'll tell you, we reported the 7.2 earthquake, and now we had a 6.3 just a day after we reported on the 7.2. This was off the coast of Japan, the eastern part. Strong earthquake registered by the JMA, 6.3, hit near the east coast of Kyushu, Japan at 2348 UTC. The agency is reporting a depth of 12.4 miles. Right now, there is no indication that there was any damage or any injuries or deaths that occurred. Last checked, we did not have any kind of tsunami warnings as well. So with the activity that we've seen on the sun, solar flares, coronal holes, CMEs, to see an uptick and stronger earthquake is all but predicted at this point. So nothing too crazy to talk about here, but just worth mentioning again, another strong, powerful earthquake within days of these active sunspots that are affecting our magnetosphere, and just barely. I mean, we're talking, grazing the magnetic field, not even full impact for this stuff, guys. So by any means am I pushing any kind of panic, but just letting you know that we just happen to have another one of these events. All right, guys, bear with us on this section of our show where we kind of find a few of the articles on this section of the show is from What's Up With That, Climate Depot, and other like-minded websites. But found a couple tonight that I wanted to quickly go over. Global warming energy restrictions threatens U.S. national security. You don't say. A review of all risk factors reveals that imposing carbon dioxide restrictions on the U.S. economy would diminish rather than enhance American military preparedness. This is written by James Taylor, not the singer, I don't think, anyway. Global warming activists claim climate change poses a threat to America's military and national security. Their primary assertion is that the alleged negative impacts from global warming, such as crop failures, droughts, and extreme weather events, create political, social, and military upheaval. To enhance our military security, these activists claim America should impose carbon dioxide restrictions on the U.S. economy and the American people. The United States sustains the most powerful military in the world because the dominant U.S. economy enables policymakers to spend more on military preparedness than any other nation. America's continuing ability to feed powerful military depends on the United States retaining its status in the world's dominant economic power. Proposals to restrict U.S. carbon dioxide emissions and impose expensive, job-killing energy sources on the economy present a clear and present danger to military strength. This is especially true and because of the Paris Climate Agreement and other international climate agreements target Western-style democracies and impose no similar carbon dioxide restrictions on mainly potentially hostile nations, such as Iran, possibly North Korea again. America has more combined coal, oil, and natural gas resources than any other nation in the world. It leads the world in oil reserves and coal reserves, and it is fourth in the world in natural gas reserves. Only one other nation has even half as much of these resources as the United States. Because of its significant role in the globe's most important energy markets, America's unique economic advantages, international leverage, and military power. By contrast, China is leading the source of the rare earth minerals that are necessary to produce wind and solar power equipment. Making a political decision to transform the U.S. and global economies from American dominant energy sources to Chinese dominant energy sources would pose new and severe threats to American international influence and U.S. national security. The negative economic and geopolitical impacts of carbon dioxide emissions restrictions and the attempted transformation to a wind and solar powered economy are amplified by the lack of any substantial national security threats related to Earth's ongoing modest warming. It is speculative and dubious to assert that crop failures, droughts, or other negative climate events occurring overseas would reduce U.S. national security. However, even if that were the case, the frequency of severity of such unfortunate events is diminishing as Earth modestly warms, not increasing, rather than being a threat multiplier that impacts ongoing modest warming severe as a threat reducer. So, interesting little write-up here. And as I'm reading this, a couple things pop off in my mind about the Chinese having a particular mineral that is needed to produce solar-like technology, and how the United States leads pretty much, it looks like almost all over the world in natural resources, oil, natural gas, and coal. And every time I think about how much emissions we put in the atmosphere here in the United States, I keep thinking about that Sky News report of the Sky News gentleman who basically was comparing the atmosphere to a big bowl of rice. And the interesting part about it is that he did a solid job at convincing people of just to get a visual. And, you know, I'll probably share it on another night. I actually wanted to share it tonight, but I'll probably wait and do it on another night. But it's a really interesting demonstration when you think about the atmosphere of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and 0.04% carbon dioxide. He goes on to discuss about 1.3% of that 0.04% of carbon dioxide. Remember, 1.3% of the 0.04% of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is man-made emissions from Australia. That's it. 1.3% of 0.04% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is man-made produced from Australia. The demonstration shows us, he pours a whole bag of rice into a bowl and says, this is the atmosphere. Pulls out 1 grain of rice and said, this is the contribution that man has made from Australia. That 1 grain of rice out of this entire bowl. And if that ain't sobering enough, and these are based off of scientific facts of what's in our atmosphere. This isn't made up numbers. This isn't some kind of chart that favors an agenda. These are real numbers. This is what the atmosphere is made of. So I think the drumbeat is starting to get a little bit louder here, but this guy wants to point here. Global warming energy restrictions would threaten national security. Think about that. It would affect national security if we put carbon emissions regulations into our economy. And if Australia is responsible for 1.3% of 0.04%, is the United States around the same or a little bit higher? 2.1%, I believe, of the 0.04% is contributed by the United States. So guys, we're talking about severe, small impacts on the climate, if any at all. 1.3% of man-made emissions is responsible for the 0.04%. How small is that? And you're telling me that the sun doesn't drive the climate? As big as the sun is all that energy the sun gives off. You're telling me that 1.3% of 0.04% is worth raising the price of energy? It's worth changing everything to where everyone loses and pays more for energy? It's time to wake up, folks. This idea of even regulating CO2 emissions, period, when the Trump administration in 2017 lowered the CO2 emissions by 2.7%. So we were already lowering emissions before we even put a plan in place. And believe it or not, it's because we started firing up more natural gas plants than we are coal. Natural gas and nuclear are probably the cleanest options when it comes to energy. Now, when I say cleanest on nuclear, I mean if everything is done right in these plants like they should be, it's clean. It's when you have a spill or a leak is when it gets messy, all right? Obviously. So before anybody takes it the wrong way, I'm just saying the reason why we saw a decrease in CO2 emissions was because we started using cleaner energy sources like natural gas. Look it up, folks. It's called Google. You'll find it. SPACEWEATHER. Force measure the sun's large role in climate change, after I was just kind of talking about in that last article here. We all know, the majority of us know, of Henrik Svensmark. It says here, by bombarding the Earth with cosmic rays and being a driving force behind cloud formations, the sun plays a much larger role on climate than the consensus scientists care to admit. And from my friend Uncle Hans, when he asked, he used to work for the UN. He was an interpreter. He spoke 5 fluent languages, very intelligent person. But he asked a UN diplomat from another country, I won't name where, why don't we talk about the impact of the sun and climate? And that diplomat from another respected country overseas simply just said, because the sun is inconvenient to talk about. Indeed it is. The Danish National Space Institute, Dr. Henrik Svensmark, has assembled a powerful array of data and evidence in his recent study, Force Measure the Sun's Large Role in Climate Change. The study shows that throughout history and now, the sun plays a powerful role in climate change. Solar activity impacts cosmic rays, which are tied to a cloud formation. Clouds, their abundance or dearth, directly affects the Earth's climate. Climate models don't accurately account for the role of clouds or solar activity in the climate change. With the result, they assume the Earth is much more sensitive to greenhouse gas levels than it is. Unfortunately, the impact of clouds and the sun on climate are understudied because climate science has become so politicized. And here is a 23-minute interview here. Sterling Burnett, a PhD, is a Heartland Senior Fellow on Environmental Policy and the Managing Editor of Environmental and Climate News. You guys can check that out. We just wanted to bring the link to you. Once again, Sven's Mark work is more important than we could ever imagine. Guys, sit tight. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, and this is the weather part of our segment tonight. I've got a couple things to talk about. First, let's talk about additional flooding and rain expected into the weekend from Texas and Louisiana. Goodness, this area has just been pummeled over the past several days. And look, I'm not trying to say I told you so, but we talked about this 2 weeks ago, where we thought that May 3rd through the 11th, we would see the most rainfall during that time period. And sure enough, a lot of people say the GFS isn't that reliable, but I think the GFS models give us a good, clear indication of what's to come. Maybe not exact to the T, but pretty close. GFS has been, in my opinion, a lot more right than it ever has in the last few months. Here we go. Widespread rain and thunderstorms are possible across the South into this weekend. Flash flood is possible from Texas to Virginia. A few severe storms with hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes are also possible. Additional rounds of heavy rain and a few severe thunderstorms may trigger flash flooding into the weekend in parts of the South and East from Texas and Louisiana to the Tennessee Valley, Appalachians, and Virginia. The tail end of a cold front has stalled out into the South, interacting with abundant moisture and an active jet stream triggering the development of widespread showers and thunderstorms with heavy rainfall rates. Here we go, talking about more flash flooding, more rain bombs, 3 to 4 inches. I mean, look at this. Early Friday morning, radar estimated rain rates of 3 to 4 inches per hour hammered Corpus Christi, Texas, leading to standing water on roads and some stalled out vehicles. The forecast: flash flood watches continue from central and eastern Texas to Louisiana, southern Arkansas, and much of Mississippi. Those watches include Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Texas, Shreveport, Louisiana, and Mississippi. We have Jackson. As always, if you're in an automobile and encounter a flood roadway, do not attempt to drive through floodwaters. If you live in a flood-prone location, be sure to stay informed on the impacts from any rising rivers, bayous, or streams. At least another 3 inches of rain is possible from parts of the lower Mississippi Valley. Locally, heavy rain is also expected this weekend from parts of the Tennessee Valley into the Appalachians and east. That could also trigger local flash flooding, especially in hilly or mountainous terrain. Timing of flood threat: the area of risk of flooding and rain will not change much into Saturday as the front stalls out. A corridor from coastal Texas into Alabama, eventually Tennessee Valley, and central Appalachians will have the most significant threat of flooding rain through Saturday. This may include one more round of thunderstorms with locally heavy rain in the Houston metro area that could lead to more local flash flood. Now, this city is taking a beating right now, Houston, that is, and I saw some footage of some heavy rainfall during an Astros game. Obviously, they went under rain delay, but here's the severe weather focus on Sunday and Sunday night. Again, it's a possibility. It's not a high threat, but a possibility across the South on Sunday into Sunday night. Severe thunderstorms or locally heavy rain will shift to the east, particularly from Virginia to Georgia. And let's see, severe weather recap. This rash of severe weather and flooding began on the plains on Sunday, this past Sunday, and they are reviewing what has happened since then. We got about 4 inches of rain in Hobby, North Freeway, I-45, and West Mountain Houston Road. Just huge amounts of rain in a short period of time. And if flooding wasn't enough, hail up to tennis ball size was reported in the Houston metro area as well. Storms may have produced a tornado near Huntsville, Alabama, early Thursday afternoon, damaging trees was reported. A flash flood emergency was issued late Thursday morning for Jackson, Mississippi, the metro area where up to 3 inches of rain fell. There were reports of water in a house and a business, as well as a water rescue in the area. Thursday morning rainfall totals around 4 inches resulted in a few houses being flooded. In Grenada, Mississippi, and Dermont, Arkansas, as a family was rescued from a home that was flooded. I mean, look at these pictures, guys. The wind damage, the flooding across the south. Look at this. Rainfall rates up to 2 inches per hour Wednesday morning, resulting in numerous high water rescues in the southern portions of Fort Worth, Texas. I'll tell you another thing that Texas is experiencing as well, and that's cooler than average temperatures. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, and I don't care. But the reason why Texas is cooler right now, soil saturation, the constant amount of rain that they've seen over the past 8 days is leading to these cooler temperatures. Saturated soil has a cooling effect. That was confirmed on weather.com, which is where we're pulling this article from, according to their research company, an IBM company, by the way, as well. So busy week across the South, Texas. You guys have seen your share of weather, but it seems to shift. We were in the northern plains, and then it shifted to the central part of the United States. Now we're in the South. So if I had to predict, I guess the East Coast and the Northwest are next to get their weather phenomenon. We'll see. Great Lakes water levels at precip of a disaster with flooding occurring imminent in New York, Ohio, and Michigan. So yeah, there's an issue here. Twice I've witnessed ice tsunamis roll up on the shores here from Lake Erie in western New York. I'll tell you, last year in 2018, the beginning of the winter season, Mari and I shot some video at Lake Erie. We had a high wind warning, and I have never seen angrier waters in my life. It was unbelievable how high the water was and how violent these waves. It looked like something in an ocean in a movie or something. The water levels on the Great Lakes are running high and could approach record territory this summer. They've been talking about this for 3 years now. New York State is bracing for flooding along the shoreline of Lake Ontario. Lakeshore flooding is already occurring in northwestern Ohio and southeastern Michigan. Great Lakes tributary waters have been filled by numerous spring rain events in the central United States. Recent rainfalls already high water levels surging in the Great Lakes, contributing to the flooding along the lake shore. Okay, folks, are we seeing what's happening here? I don't have my arrow. I feel deprived tonight. Let's talk about this. Let's move this over a little bit, can we? Yep. All right. So every state that I'm showing you right now, every state is going through some kind of flooding issue for the most part. Nebraska, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Arkansas, Mississippi, Missouri, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, parts of Tennessee will soon start to flood. We are now talking about flooding in the Great Lakes because of all the spring rain that we've had. Guys, it's still spring. We're halfway through spring, technically. And we're crushing precipitation records. We covered a report tonight that claimed that we have seen the wettest 12-month span in recorded history ever. Not just in the last 100 years, not the last 200 years, whatever. It's never happened. 36 inches of rainfall in that 12-month span. It's never happened from that period of time to now. It's like Scott Chapman and I were talking about. The signs are all around us. Sometimes we have to look a little harder for the information, but when we find it, it's startling. The censorship has already begun, folks. A lot of this stuff is not being talked about on mainstream media. Now, if you go to the weather.com and AccuSource Weather, yeah, they talk about it. But you're not going to find it in your top news headlines on your local news or even your websites. You pretty much have to be a weather buff to even know this is happening right now. Let's take a look at our latest. Oh, that's our North Atlantic temp. Jump above baseline. Now it's heading back towards below baseline. El Nino is what I wanted to show you guys, but I don't have it up, so I apologize. Actually, you know what? Mari has this lovely spot here. It always updates at the bottom of our website here, grandsolarminimum.com, thegrandsolarminimum.com. You can see a slight bit of warming here through the region that we used to say that's cooling. Like near Hawaii, we saw it at around a 25 and a 24. These areas are starting to see a slight warmer temperature in that region as well. There is El Nino. And for a minute, it kind of woke back up for a minute because it was starting to dread towards the neutral spot of El Nino. And then it rose really fast back up to the 1 degree mark above baseline. But here we are, May 10th. And we are seeing it bottom out to neutral conditions once again for El Nino. So who knows how much longer this will continue. Now, the one correction I want to mention before I go into our GFS report, and thank you to the Starman Solar Observations. We were talking about El Nino and its impact on hurricane season. And, you know, I might have led on to believe that the temperatures and everything had something to do with it. Well, it does and it doesn't. It's the amount of wind shear that these El Ninos produce. And when you have an El Nino, so the stronger the El Nino, the more wind shear we will have, which rips apart any kind of cyclones or hurricanes. So the good news is part of the reason why you're seeing possibly a updated hurricane season outlook is because the El Nino is weaker than NOAA predicted. So now that we're getting right at to the meat of the bone, I guarantee you we'll have another updated. If El Nino continues to weaken, I would not be surprised to see an updated hurricane forecast of possibly seeing a little bit above average on named storms and possibly an extra major hurricane, 1 or 2, to make landfall. So if these El Ninos create wind shear and tears up these storms, the weaker the El Nino, the least amount of wind shear we'll be experiencing and the possibility for increased storms as well. So it has nothing to do with all about temperature. Of course, it has to have the ocean temperatures as these storms are forming and moving towards land. But with wind shear being involved as strong as it is, that's why we didn't see that many hurricanes last year. So, all right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the GFS report. And of course, here we are on the 11th. The South is finally starting to see this system move away. And by Monday, another system forms right behind it to go over areas that's already saturated. Meanwhile, in Northwest Ohio, Northeast Ohio, and the Northeast, we'll start to see heavier precipitation. And look out. Places like Buffalo and Erie, PA, you guys are already talking about coastal flooding. And by Monday, May 13th, it looks like you're going to get a good dose of moderate rain on the 13th. So already on the lookout for coastal flooding. More rain developing in central Texas. So this stationary front stuff looks to be extending itself through the 14th of May. Another low pressure system moving its way across the Midwest into Northeast Ohio. And again, another system into the Northeast that will bring a quick quarter inch to half inch of rain. And May 18th, again, this is amazing that I even see snow chances on May 19th. Obviously, these are in the higher elevations, but still amazing to see this much rain, or snow, I should say. And boy, does it get wet. Oh, look at that. I just said it at the beginning of this broadcast, or not at the beginning, but just a few minutes ago. I'm sorry. So we've been talking about the majority of the country, the North, the South, the Midwest. They've all kind of seemed to get their weather. And here about May 16th, we see things starting to wind down for the South and the middle part of the country. But now the Northeast and the Northwest start to, I mean, look at this. Massive system out here in the Northwest, the Northern Plains as well. But still, this system is rotating backwards. Guys, I'm going forwards. All right, let me go backwards a little bit. This low pressure system is going to rotate towards the west. May 20th, May 21st. Look at that. By the 21st of May, So as this storm gets its act together here in the Central Plains states, in the Northern Plains, right here, May 17th, next Friday, it gets its act together right here on the 19th, organizes, and then starts to rotate to the west, to the northwest to be exact. That's right. This storm system, according to the GFS, is breaking apart and shifting to the northwest. And look at how many days that we see rain in the northwest as if these systems don't go anywhere. So this may not be the exact layout. And boy, look at that system out here. Wow. We got lucky on that. Let's hope this doesn't get closer to the land. And I'm talking about that storm system out the Atlantic, as it really gets its act together in the mid-Atlantic. And it looks like it's curving back to the United States, but it looks like our jet stream will pull it out up in Nova Scotia area. But guys, we need to really pay attention now. We're shifting our focus. The South, the deep South in Texas, start to get your break after the 15th and the 16th of May. Get a quick shot across the Midwest, the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. And then that's when we start to see this really weird mutant storm forming here in the Northwest, Montana, Wyoming. And instead of going east, this storm splits up and rotates back towards the Northwest and creates a mess of snow and rain and several chances. So the Northern Plains and the Northwest seem to be the next victim spots here. And these are areas really that are trying to recover. I mean, this is almost like Mother Nature's cruel joke right now, as the fields might be dry enough to start, maybe possibly begin work around the 18th of May in Nebraska, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, South Dakota, North Dakota. Look what happens. More rain moves in, more flooding comes in, and just an abundance of moisture over the next several days. So starting May 18th, we have to start focusing our attention to the northern plains and the northwestern part of the country. So the Northwest is getting theirs. The Northeast, right now, we're kind of seeing waves of moisture almost on an every other day basis. So the Northeast, the Northwest are the next spots of focus here after we get past the 18th of May. Now, temperature-wise, let's see how those are holding up. Because a couple nights ago, we were talking about 80s, possibly by May 20th. A little bit nicer here, guys. Back in the 60s, more yellow across the country. It's starting to look a little bit more like spring, right? I mean, as we get later into May, more warmer temperatures across the Midwest, into the Atlantic states, and into the Northeast. Now, the far Northeast, Maine, New Hampshire, very northern parts of New York, are going to stay in the low 60s. But finally, by May 23rd, so they did back down those really hot temperatures a little bit. We do see some 83-degree temperatures possible still for the 20th of May. But that 88 mark is gone. Realistically, it's looking like 70s, upper 60s by the 22nd, back into the low 70s by the 23rd, and then we creep again into the 70s by the end of this month. So the Northeast looking comfortable. The areas that are going to see the real heat is going to be across the deep South. So my goodness, guys, I feel for you already. Check out this heat wave down in the South. This gets started right up on the 18th and 19th. So as all those rain, now, again, how ironic is this? So the 20th, this is like the third day of dry weather for most of the South, and we're in the mid-80s. Some 90 readings across the deep, deep South on the 21st. So during this time that we're looking at drier weather in the South, look at that, 94 degrees in Georgia. And then look at the northern plains in the Northwest. Those are high temperatures. 38 degrees in Idaho, 38 degrees in Montana, 40s in North Dakota. Those are the areas that we're going to see all that heavy rain and precip. So look at that, 100 degrees here in the Georgia, South Carolina border. Again, dry weather across the South for much of this part of the month. But this cold front, boy, it's really doing its number as far as trying to keep that heat in the South. And if you live in the deep South, starting on the 18th of May, that's when you're going to start to notice summer-like conditions down here, guys. Big time. You're going to dry up, but you're going to heat up as well. I don't have to try to go out of my way to prove my point because I'm able to show you guys the correlation. So we just talked about in the precipitation forecast that the south is going to dry out, and look, it's going to heat up. The areas that's going to get wet again, the northwest and the northern plains, they're going to stay cool. And my correlation to this is saturated soil content creates cooling. And I think it's showing us here in our temperature readings. So that's going to do it for me tonight, guys. Mari, did you want to say hello to our lovely people in the chat?
I will say hello to all the lovely people in the chat. Actually, Charles Scott just popped in, said hello to everyone. So hello. People are giving us their weather updates. So we got ET in New Orleans, and the storm's going strong as it hit in the bottom half and fizzled out when it came to coastal Mississippi, but then it got pretty hard north of Jackson today. We're getting these local updates. I love them.
I do too.
Jeff Borders said back on Tuesday they were taking pictures 24 hours after the storm. There was still a foot of deep drifts of hailstones still melting and lingering. So he's saying Mr. MBB, whatever, that channel has pictures of other people in the area showing 16-inch deep hail.
Jesus.
Yikes. And then those are drifts, I'm assuming.
Right.
Pisces is in the chat.
Hello, Pisces.
He's out in Maryland, and they are flooding. He says it's downpouring there right now, and they have some major thunder and lightning. So he's getting scared in the chat every now and then. He's like, boom, and he scares everyone in the chat.
We got some very heavy rain earlier in upstate New York in the capital region, so that makes sense.
And then Lane in Oregon says, no spring, no rain. What's going on? So it's different.
It's coming,
but this is typical.
Your shot at the moisture in the Northwest is coming after the 16th of May. So you guys, in fact, you'll be wishing you wouldn't have said that, because it does look like you guys are going to get the next abundance of moisture in the country as far as precipitation.
And that's all. There's loads of people in the chat.
Nice.
Hello to all of you. Sorry about the trouble with YouTube. Interesting issue. It just would not let us use the stream event that we had created. We had to go in and do a new one an alternate way. So I'm glad at least this worked for us, Jake. So sorry about that confusion. It looks like we got a good portion of the people back into this new link. So that's good. I hope you guys all have a great night and a great weekend, and all you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day on Sunday.
Indeed. In fact, Grand Solar Minimum channel here, we are going to take the weekend in honor of Mother's Day this weekend. So we will be back on the air live Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Unless something happens that we just absolutely have to break in this weekend, we don't plan to be back live again until Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Mari will edit these videos into smaller clips so you guys can watch them at your own pace. We feel like that some people enjoy the longer shows, and then there's other people out there who are on the go and need them in shorter doses. So I think Mari has come up with a fair way and balanced way of getting the information out to you guys. So please like and share us as much as possible. And remember, guys, thank you for tuning in, and we will talk soon, especially on Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Take care, guys.